Ever feel like the world doesn't quite get neurodivergence or like you're constantly adapting in spaces that weren't built with you in mind? Today's episode is going to feel like a deep exhale. Our guest today is Randi Williams, a licensed therapist in Georgia and founder of Kestrel Psychotherapy. With over 20 years in the mental health field, Randi offers therapy to neurodivergent adults, including ADHD, autistic individuals, and highly sensitive people, and specializes in supporting fellow therapists navigating their own identities, burnout, or leadership challenges. Her approach is attachment informed, affirming, and deeply person centered, helping clients explore emotional patterns, unmet needs, and nervous system responses that have shaped how they relate themselves and others. Clients and colleagues describe Randi as grounding, collaborative, and wise, with a practical, down-to-earth style that helps people feel seen without pressure to perform or fit a mold. In addition to therapy and supervision, Randi offers consultation to therapists nationwide on how ADHD, trauma, and neurodivergence show up in the therapy room, often in ways easy to miss or misinterpret. She's passionate about helping clinicians feel more confident, supporting neurodivergent clients, even if they don't specialize in that work. Welcome back. I'm Kiara Brown, and in my practice, I work with people who feel stuck in survival mode, whether from anxiety, past trauma, or the exhaustion of always holding it together. I help them slow down, feel safe in their own skin, and reconnect with what matters. I know how much courage it takes to face what's underneath the surface and how life-changing it can feel to finally be seen. That's why I started this podcast, to hold space for honest, nourishing conversations that remind us we're not alone and healing is possible. In this conversation, Rand and I talk about what it really means to be affirming, not just in theory, but in how we show up in the therapy room. We unpack how trauma and neurodivergence can overlap, how to recognize what might be going on unseen in our clients or ourselves, and how we as therapists can create more spacious, non-performative relationships where people feel free to be exactly who they are. And as always, if you have questions or comments about what we're talking about that you feel you want to learn more about or just ask us, feel free to leave in the comments. And if you like what Randi has to say, or if you yourself have been struggling with ADHD and you want to find a therapist in your area that can help you, reach out to one of us and we can help connect you with therapists in your area. Like I said, Randi is in Georgia and I am in Pennsylvania, Vermont, South Carolina, and Florida. I look forward to you hearing our conversation and letting us know what you took away from it. All right, I'm hitting record now. Hi, Randi. Thank you for joining me today. I know we've been working together a lot with the peer group, but we haven't actually had a chance to talk one-on-one yet. So I'm curious, what brought you to being a therapist and your niche?
Well, thank you for having me. And absolutely, I'm treating this in part as practicing those skills that the marketing group was like, you got to practice and you got to do. So thank you for doing this. You're so brave to start it. And I'll just say I will get less anxious the more we talk. Um, because I got to own it, right? I got to own it. We talk to clients about owning stuff, so I'm trying to own it too. Yeah. What got me into counseling? That one's tricky. I don't really know the answer 100%. It's just kind of the direction life went. I always wanted to be a doctor, like a medical doctor. Um, I just grew up if like how honest do you want these things to be, right? Because this is out there. No, I just grew up in a small town and I really wanted to I was competitive. I should own that. I was really competitive. And I wanted to prove that I could do what seemed to me to be the hardest thing, which was become a medical doctor, right? That's what all the smart people do. So honestly, I think if I reflect and I'm honest, I wanted to uh, outsmart people and be a doctor. So I did undergrad, and that was the plan. And then one day I went to pick up the study book for the MCAT. I think that's what it's called,
Yeah.
to get into medical school. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, Like, that was it. It was like 4 years of undergrad, pre-med stuff, you ready to start pursuing it, and I was like, "I don't wanna do this anymore," which at the time seemed like a lifetime. Now I'm very glad that, like, I was willing to walk away when I did and not, like, keep trying to push through on something, right?
Yeah. 'Cause med school is a
Knowing what
lot. Well,
yeah, right.
yeah.
And so I, at that point, was like, well, I still really am passionate. Like it was no longer competitive driven. It was like passionate about helping people. Right. And so then it was like, all right, how can I still help people? And, also I really like science and that's what I've been studying and, neurobiology and, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, let's look into like more neuroscience-y sort of stuff. And, ended up at that point being like, "Well, I wonder what being a counselor would be like." But that was something I wasn't exposed to as a kid. Like, I had no idea counselors existed probably until maybe high school? I don't know. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So, really glad I figured out that was a thing, and then I decided, at that point, like, "Let's maybe do this. Let's take a detour." So that's how I'm here.
Nice. Yeah, when I was in undergrad, I majored in psychology and neuroscience, and for a hot minute, I thought about, taking, like, the neuroscience track farther and, like, doing, like, being neurologist or something like that, but
Yeah.
that involved medical school
Yep.
and all the guts and gore and blood and all that that's involved with everything. I'm like, no. Like, it's
Funny.
but learning how the brain actually functions and the physiology and the anatomy
Yeah.
was so fun, and, like, I loved all those classes. I feel like I also helped, like, influence how I approach therapy because I know how the brain physically works, and it's
Yeah.
not just, like, surface level, like, this is how behaviors happen, but it's like, okay, what's actually happening physically with the brain? So I feel like it's,
Yeah.
like, kinda like with the biology background, knowing all those things probably helped you too.
Yeah, it definitely similar. I was like, well, maybe I'll become a psychiatrist, right? Like maybe that'll be my specialty. Maybe I'll do the neurology and then I was like, no, I don't want to study anymore. The blood and guts I was okay with. Now I'm not. Now absolutely don't come near me with your blood. So, isn't it weird how we just change over time and things that don't bother us now do and vice versa. So, yeah, so that's fun. That's fun to know that yours was kinda you have that interest as well. Did you always wanna be a therapist?
I did, actually. Yeah, I've known that known, it's perfect, I've known, but I wanted to be a therapist since I was in junior high. And so,
Okay.
like, from junior high throughout, my director has been therapist, counselor,
Yep.
all that way. Like,
Yeah. That's awesome. It might be, I don't know, interesting to you to be like, this chick didn't even know a therapist existed until, like, much later in life. Like, we just small town, we didn't talk about stuff. The most you might get would be, like, some sort of counseling from your church or something like that, you know?
I mean, I grew up in a small town too, but my older brother, I'm the youngest of 5, but my older brother had, ADHD.
Mhm.
And so, like, he had to have services to help with that, so like, I got exposed to it from him,
Yeah.
and just, like, seeing him what he dealt with, and then since my siblings are so much older than I am, all my
Mhm.
friends would come to me and be like, "Hey, like, what should I do with this?" And I kinda, like, just spiraled from there with me.
Yes, I do hear that quite a bit, right? The whole, like, my friends came to me to talk about it sort of thing, and so I just found out that that's what I did. Yeah, I get that. Fun. Okay. And then I think the other question you asked is like, what's my niche?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, ADHD. Actually, yeah. Um, ADHD is like really what jazzes me a lot. Um, I'm very passionate about that, but also, I do love working with people who have like autism and ADHD co-occurring as well, because we do see that happens a lot. Now I'm not I don't have the skill set to work with like level 2, level 3 autism stuff, but people who maybe don't even know they have autism or recently realized or are wondering about, right? Supporting them and that ADHD mix because I'm certainly learning, they need some different types of supports, but also
Yeah.
some similar supports, right? And then the other piece is childhood emotional neglect.
Mhm.
So, like all those kind of chronic, like more micro traumas, if you will, that just kind of build up over time, who like some people will look at and be like, what do you got to complain about? Right? Your life was great. Your parents were great. X, Y, and Z was great. But there's just that, like, invalidation that's maybe come up for them over
Yeah.
time, or their needs weren't met because people didn't know what their needs were, and I find that comes up a lot with people with ADHD, right? So, maybe no one knew that the kiddo had ADHD, so people are just parenting, and you maybe have experienced this from your personal life since you said your brother, has it. Um, people don't really know, like, why does this kid need something so different, and don't realize how that stuff, like, could build up over time, and then I like working with the adults on the adult side of it who are, like, either always knew they had it but didn't know what it meant or how it could impact, didn't know they had it at all, and they're just figuring that out, right? Or, those who are, like, really questioning, like, "Could this be what's going on?" And then you layer on that, like, child emotional neglect. It's a very, like, there's a lot to explore.
Yeah. It is so nuanced too. And I actually have one on my caseload too. Like her sister has like, a more severe form of ADHD than she does. So she was never diagnosed as a kid.
Yeah.
And like she never got the support that she needed
Yep.
for it. And she got diagnosed when she was in her early 20s. And now she's like, now I need to figure out how I'm going to function
Yeah.
with like not in like a school setting because like school is like so regimented.
Yep.
And like now you're in the workforce, you're living independently.
Yep.
The executive dysfunction piece is coming up and trying to
Yep.
figure out how to manage life with all that. It's like
Yeah.
ADHD is not my niche. My niche is more anxiety. So I'm like trying to
Mm.
like learn how to like I've always struggled with my ADHD clients. So like what's like your way of approaching sessions with them?
Owning it, like, right? Owning it in the room, and in fact, um, I I deal with anxiety as well, right? So even as we're talking, like, the anxiety is still there, right? You being a therapist for anxiety, you get that.
Yeah.
Um But also the other bit that's there is, while I'm not officially diagnosed, I am self-identified as ADHD because it's my father has it, my daughter has it, my sister probably has it, I probably have it. It's just we didn't diagnose, when we were growing up, sort of thing. Um, Again, especially in my small town. And so, um, I'll own it too, and I'll own it with my clients, and I'll own it here today. Like, I'm gonna get jumbled. Yes, it's the anxiety, but also it's more my brain is running 500 miles a minute. So if we, like, go and talk about modalities, I'll be like, "I know the stuff. I just don't always connect the words with the modality." Or, we'll talk about DBT skills or something, and I'll be like, "I know there are 4 components, and I know what they're all meant to do, but the word might escape me in the moment," right? So that's kinda how I approach it with clients. We own it. This is how it's gonna show up for me. I do all virtual therapy, so I think the benefit there is it's one less task when you talk about the executive function. It's one
Yeah.
less task or 15 less tasks to do in order to get to therapy, right?
Yeah.
You also have your fidgets. We love to have fidget competitions, right? So here's the current little glow guy that's also a poppet, so we love to share our fidgets. And, we own it when it's showing up. And then I like to, marry together as much as I can a balance of teaching skills, right? Um, but also personalizing them and making them practical for the individual. Because I think one of the differences between working directly with a therapist on your needs and like reading 500 self help books and watching all the TikToks in the world that give you the ADHD hacks is just feeling validated and recognizing like there's not a one size fits all when you're dealing with anything really, but especially executive function. Like what drove your dopamine hit today might not drive it tomorrow. And so it feels like we're back at the drawing board. Let's go back.
Yeah. Because like yeah, it's like especially some of my clients and like in the past when I worked with kiddos that have ADHD. like what was driving their dopamine hit was like video games.
Yeah.
Like, it was like super addicting. And like one client was like, I can't keep doing this anymore. I'm spending way too much money because like he'd asked his parents to buy like it was $500 worth of like Minecraft stuff or like
Mm,
Fortnite stuff. I'm like, okay. And he's like, I can't keep doing this. This is causing me too much stress. And I was like, okay, so like what works for you? Like, what do you want to do? And like he himself, like, I'm just gonna cold turkey it.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, was cold turkey it. And it worked for him.
Yeah.
He still played Minecraft, but he stopped Fortnite.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you have to individualize and, also people might try, a new strategy and it works for a hot minute and then it's done. And so you're like, all right, let's put this one back in the Rolodex for the next time that we want to try it because it did work. And also let's pull a new one. It's really, in my opinion, about creating this huge toolkit or huge Rolodex of things that might work. Right.
Yeah.
And encouraging. And again, that's what I think is unique about doing therapy as opposed to like you all try, you trying to do it on your own. Well, you can learn so, so much. Um, it's really helpful to have someone be like, it's okay. Like, don't beat yourself up because it didn't work this time. Right.
Yeah. Or just
Yeah.
like,
So,
or just relying on medication to manage everything else. Because like,
I mean, medication, I am a huge fan of medication for ADHD. I think, everything shows us at this point, all, science shows us that the best combo is therapy and medication. But you're exactly right. It doesn't fix it. And I was just talking with a client earlier this week who's like, I wish it would just fix it. And she's like, it just takes the edge. And I'm like, yeah, it's really, for a lot of people, that's all it does. It takes the edge off so you can work with your brain more effectively. But it's not. There's no fix that I'm aware of at this point. Maybe we'll find out later.
yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe in like 50 years, they'll like have done so many brain scans of people with ADHD, they can figure out like pinpoint where in the brain it
Yeah,
happens.
right.
Because like ADHD is really more like it is not just behavioral; it's neurological too.
Yeah,
Like their
it's a
brain, like physiology.
neurodevelopmental disability or
Yeah,
disorder. Yeah.
yeah. It's so it's like yeah. And I can see it for ADHD. Like for some certain diagnoses, I fully am on board with like medication because like they need it to be. But other ones, I'm like, okay, let's try like some natural ways of doing it first before like you
Sure.
do meds, especially when it comes to kids.
Yeah.
I'm like not a huge fan of medication for kids because my nephew, whenever he's put on ADHD medication, it can, because I know it's a side effect, but it can completely suppress his appetite so much that it stunted his
Mm,
growth. And once
mhm.
I actually got off of them, that he like shot up. Like he's taller than me now. I mean, all of my nephews are basically because I'm
Yeah.
short. He's like almost 6 foot, and like he
Yeah.
has stayed so short for so long because of the medication, and he's like a rail.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. There can be side effects. We'll continue to learn. Thankfully, newer medicines are supposed to be more effective or less side effects, right? And I'm totally with you. Like if we can, and my doctors too, if we can work on skill building and management, wonderful. But when it comes to it's starting to really kill your self-esteem, right? Making to
Yeah,
where you can't have friends because the name for ADHD is terrible. It's like most people will say it's the worst name ever because that's not what it really looks like most of the time. It's
yeah,
executive function, it's emotional regulation, it's your 0 to 60 in anger or excitement or sadness. And people don't understand why. And so it leads to a lot of misdiagnoses. Uh, I've worked with, and I supervise therapists as well who work with, children. And the number of diagnoses these kids will, come to us with sometimes ODD and bipolar disorder and anxiety and the thing missing, ADHD. Or they'll have all that and ADHD. And it'll be the kind of thing where people will be like, yeah, yeah. And I'll be like, all right, we got any ADHD maybe there? Oh yeah, they have ADHD too. The ADHD is the underlying issue
nice.
most of the time.
Yeah,
Driving, all the other stuff, right?
yeah,
Uh, the depression, the anxiety, right? So that's where I'm like, when we start to see those things happen, then let's do therapy And, if the medication can help them manage better, let's do it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's so many kids that get, especially boys, that get ADHD and ODD a lot of
Ab-
times. And like my brother had that. He was like he had ADHD and ODD, and now he's older. He's honestly older than me, but like
mhm.
I don't need, he's not even on medication anymore. He uses his skills. He's a manager at where he works. Like
Yep.
he's basically being a big old boss man, and he's awesome. I'm super proud of him. But like,
Yep.
but it's like I've always just felt like ODD is more like an environmental diagnosis. It's like whenever like their environment that they're in isn't very supportive, so they're acting out to get
Yeah.
what they need. So
Yeah. Without
I can get it.
being an expert on it, right? I would agree with that. And in the therapist I'm working with, it's always how can we help the environment support this kiddo more, right? And you really shouldn't be given an ODD diagnosis if you have ADHD unless you can pinpoint that the symptoms of ODD are completely separate of the ADHD. And let me tell how easy is that to do? Not very
God,
easy, right? Because
yeah,
if the ODD symptoms are related to if they're coming up, if the defiance or is coming up in relation to things that require them to suppress the ADHD symptoms, like moving around, sustaining focus or concentration, task switching, task interruption, any of those things, then you shouldn't really diagnose the ODD. I don't know how then otherwise you really can diagnose the ODD because all you can't separate out ADHD from who you are, in my opinion.
yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, that's how I always view it too. Because like a lot of when I did family based, a lot of my boys that had it were like diagnosed with that. Like, okay, but all of their behaviors are based on the ADHD side of things, and then not being able to focus,
Yep.
not being able to like do the task you ask them to do right then and there. They just finish
Mhm.
one task before they change something else.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just need to support them. Give them the
Yeah.
tools to like give them time, give them space, like actually talk to them.
Yeah. Back to the environment, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to them, right? And then while we're talking about, how it shows up in boys, right? ADHD manifests so much differently in girls
Oh yeah.
often, not always, but often. And so that's why we see a lot of girls that just get passed on, right? Like, oh, they're kind of spacey, they're ditzy, they could be doing better, right? But we don't see the externalizing behavior. It's all kind of happening in here and they're not causing a fuss. The most that they're doing is like just, maybe daydreaming, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then we misdiagnosing it forever. They're more sensitive, right? That's just how girls are. They're just sensitive. And then we just, they keep growing up wondering what the heck's wrong. Why do I feel, why does the world seem so different from me than other people? Why do I feel so isolated and alone and unique? Why do I have trouble with friends? And then a lot of them, don't realize it until they've created all these scripts in their head of how not enough they are or how too much they are, um, right? Leading to
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, or they get misdiagnosed with bipolar or borderline, you know?
Yeah. Because like, yeah, because like those are like the more because women are more emotional. Those are the those are the more emotional diagnoses that
Mhm.
women usually get. It's like and I don't know about you, but for me personally, like I mean, I'm honestly not a psychiatrist, and so I can't. I'm not. I don't do assessments for diagnosing. But from my experience, I don't feel like you can really diagnose bipolar until after they get out of puberty. Anyway,
Mm,
because puberty in and of itself, regardless of the sex, your hormones are constantly changing, which constantly
sure.
causes mood
Yeah.
swings in and of
Yeah.
itself. So it's like, how can you know how if it's just growing
Right.
up or if it's bipolar?
Right. Right. Yeah, I see a lot of back and forth, and I think this is where all that information, I'm stoning it in my head like it's jumbled. So I always kind of like check myself, especially when I'm like supervising with supervisees and such. Um, but best practice usually is you shouldn't be diagnosing bipolar until, like you said, after puberty. And even then, we really should be making sure there's not other things that are happening, environment, right?
Yeah.
And then any sort of other, ADHD again might be one of them, autism, maybe a combination, right? And I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that we don't even know yet that time will give us more info on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever you're working with like your, I guess it's odd ADHD, is how they like shorten it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the combos. How can you tell which symptom is more autism versus more ADHD?
I guess I don't know if it matters. I'm just looking with the client at what is showing up for you that you're feeling is creating challenges, right? Is it difficulty with communicating with people? And if so, why? Is it the more you're having trouble picking up on what they're putting out like that? The language people I hear use a lot is it's like everyone has this rule book on how we're supposed to engage and I don't have it, right? Is it more that stuff that's going on, or is it more you're up here in your brain trying really hard not to share with them this interesting thought that just entered in, and so you're like distracted, right? Like which of these things are coming up? But at the end of the day, those are social skills that we can work on either way, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it's owning this is something with your friends and your family. Like this is something I struggle with. Just owning it doesn't mean I don't care about you. It just means I either need you to have patience or be explicit with me, or know that if I tell you about the random thought that dropped into my head, it's not because I don't love you. It's that my brain's moving 1,000 miles a minute. And I probably also still heard what you said. No, that's my favorite. Like, did you even hear what I said? Oh, yeah, I can repeat it verbatim. And also, I just saw, this thing out of the corner of my eye that came up. Right.
Yeah.
For me, I just really work with them more on like what seems to be coming up more for you. Right. And a lot of it is let's focus on executive functioning and emotional regulation. Those tend to be the two areas that people want to address first. And then we get more to like the interpersonal skill development sort of stuff.
That makes sense. Like figure out like help them regulate their emotions first, and then like okay, now let's focus on how I can interact with the rest of the world and
Yeah.
it not cause more behavioral or conflicts in my relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, because a lot of the clients I work with were also learning a lot of schema and self beliefs because of that emotional neglect, or we're trying to help them. You don't have to people please all the time to get, like there's also a lot of that stuff we're constantly working on. So I'm very CBT driven, but not to the point of just don't think like that. Think like this instead, and you'll feel better. Not like that cut and dry, because that's not how we work as humans, but like,
Yeah.
okay, let's understand that these have created pathways in your brain. That's how you think automatically now. And so that's how you're going to respond emotionally. And so, how can we help you think differently, right? So let's not think so negatively about yourself, right? You're not too much. You have ADHD and you have a lot of energy and excitement, and that can be a good thing, in a lot of settings. And in some settings, how can we help you manage it so that you're not getting in trouble in class, right?
Yeah. And it's also like part of like where I think schools like in the States don't do a good job for kids that have ADHD because they have to sit for hours and hours on end, and they have gym for maybe 20 minutes, maybe 40 if you're lucky, depending on what grade you're in. And then, but once you hit sixth grade and it's a lot of schools, you lose recess, which is outside time or the free play time.
Yeah.
And then when you hit junior high, at least some of the schools I worked in and gone to, once you're in study hall, you're sitting in that room and you better not get out of your seat. You have to do work.
Right.
So then like they don't get their energy out.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree that with a lot of schools, I know there are schools that are going to be better. There are teachers going to be better. Administration's going to be better. Um, but all the things you just mentioned, very important, but also funny side note. Sometimes PE is the worst place for a kid with ADHD. Any thoughts on why?
Because it's too unstructured.
It's too what? Too unstructured?
Yeah, unstructured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too unstructured. There's too much going on, too much sensory stuff happening. It's loud. I mean, think about it. Where's PE usually at?
Yeah, in the
Gymnasium,
gym. Yeah.
right? And it's just sensory overload, you know? So it's like, on one hand, people will be like, "Oh, give extra playtime to the kids with ADHD," except it's unstructured and it's loud and there's so much going on. And then this is where we often have peer conflicts, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're ostracizing me, or they don't want to play with me, or I'm this or I'm that, right? I'm taking, we also have a lot of with ADHD, a lot of rejection sensitivity that comes up. And so not only is it like, oh, they don't want to play with me today, it's they are rejecting me and everything about me, and I am just a terrible mess of a human being now, you know? Um, so it's really hard because even when we try to give them that extra support, that might not be the right support for that particular, kid and how their ADHD shows up.
That is true. I mean, at least from my brother and my nephew, whenever they did sports, it was like the best time for them. Because obviously, whenever you're doing a sport, especially practice it, like you have to do this certain thing all the
Mhm.
time. Like you have to run
Mhm.
laps, you have to do like this drill, like
Mhm.
whatever it was. Because my brother played football, and he is phenomenal at football. And like he, I'll never forget this. Like he had there's one game where like they actually put him in. He was a defender, I believe. I am horrible at knowing positions on on sports, but like he
I
was a
don't know about
defender.
it.
But like he was able to push back two guys so that they could like score a touchdown,
Mhm.
and like he was great. But his like it was structured and it was contained, but it was still like activity that he could do.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's great because they figured out what worked for him and he was able to like do it. And that's what we want. And then for some kids, even with the ADHD, what they need is to be able to go to the library and read, right?
Yeah,
But we're talking about how all this shows up with kids, which is super important. But then think about all those kids that never were identified and now they're adults, right? And how many of them don't even realize, especially with moms, and I do work primarily with women. I don't mind working with men. It's just it seems like the women that I'm usually working with, a lot of them don't even realize until their own kid is diagnosed with ADHD. And then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I see." It's like Pandora. I've seen it described as Pandora's box. And I have to agree with that for our family at least. It's like, "Oh, you've got this one," and then you're like, "Oh, wait a minute." Then you're like, so then you're trying to work with a kid with ADHD while also trying to figure out your own stuff as well and how your ADHD might impair your ability to parent, right? And, to be overstimulated or to shut down or, fill in the blank, right?
yeah,
So I also love working with it like throughout the lifetime too.
yeah. And that's just interesting you're talking about. It's like my like my son's 4, and he has like he's starting to have like some speech issues, like where he's stuttering a lot.
Mhm.
And my husband is undiagnosed ADHD, like because he never got diagnosed.
Oh,
And but I can see all the signs in him. And then like, I also have I have family that have it. I'm like, could my son have it? And I was like, he's too young to be diagnosed. But it's like and then I start seeing some signs in him. Then I'm like, okay, I do those same things. So could I have it? And it's like I've never been diagnosed, but I've always been diagnosed with it with anxiety. And it's
and
like, who
anxiety
knows?
and ADHD are BFFs a lot of times, you
Yeah.
know? In fact, it's a lot of times, the anxiety that will help keep the ADHD a little bit in check almost. That's my theory anyway, because the anxiety keeps you from doing some of the impulsive things that if you didn't have, you probably would do, right? It's also interesting sometimes when you see someone's anxiety decrease when they start ADHD medicine. That's always interesting too, because it's like, "Oh, my brain isn't going 100 miles an hour ruminating quite as much anymore or jumping." from rumination point to rumination point, right? Driving that anxiety. Or I'm able to socialize a little bit better, so I'm not feeling so anxious about it. So it's very interesting to see how sometimes even starting the ADHD medicine can help like decrease some of the anxiety. And then sometimes it just comes from therapy. People are like, oh, well, that's why I get anxious in these situations. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I've
And
been
then I keep like,
rejected my whole life.
yeah. And then you can like use the skills and like everything will like fall in place.
That's what we hope. It
Yeah,
takes a long time
hopefully.
though, right? I don't
Yeah.
know about you in your practice, but like, I mean, I find that making these big changes takes a long time. Like we can work on skills all day and you can implement them and you can make those changes. But then the like belief that goes along with it, the changing of the beliefs and the having compassion for yourself automatically, the not letting those old things come up when you're trying to practice your skills and interact with, friends and family. Like it's like you almost need a little coach on your shoulder for like a long time.
Same with my clients. I mean, a lot of my clients, they're trauma clients, and like we're like helping with all those traumas. A lot of them have like intense abuse from childhood, some sexual assault history, and it's like dealing with all those thoughts and
Mhm.
feelings kind of come
Mhm.
up. And I've had I've had practice. I've had a lot of people just stay. Like I opened in 2023 is when I opened my practice, and I still the same base core
Mhm.
caseload because they're just unpacking all those emotions and all those beliefs because it just
Yeah.
takes so long.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I say that because I want people, to know that they're not failing at therapy if
Right.
it takes time. Also big fan of, if you want to learn the skills and then go and do and then come back and see, when you need tune-ups, like those are great. Those are great too. But I guess there's not if you feel like it's helping you, I don't think there's really a super wrong way for therapy. So sometimes I feel like I have clients who are like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't, it's not fixed, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Um, but yeah, so in addition to therapy, I think the other thing that I love to spend my time in is supervising a therapist as well. And I love teaching them all these things that we've talked about as well. I love them coming in and talking about a case and being like, oh, I didn't realize ADHD actually impacted people that much. And you're like, yeah, let's learn about it together. So that's super fun. And then it's really fun when the therapists themselves might have ADHD or maybe they're highly sensitive people. A lot of our therapists are very empathetic. And so they might also have like that highly sensitive person, like temperament and stuff. And so I love working with them on how is that coming up for you or your ADHD or your ADHD coming up and like in the therapy space and in your professional practice. So I like doing that too. It's pretty fun. So it lets you have both sides, both client and therapist side.
That's so cool. What got you into like doing the supervision piece of things?
Supervision. So in my former life, before I was doing private practice, I worked at a community mental health agency. And so I was in the like executive leadership part of that. So I really love the leadership bit and the development of the people that I was, managing and managing alongside with. So when I left that, I wanted to immediately dive into how can I still have an impact that's greater than just, one-to-one client. How can I continue to train and be that safe space for people, especially in community mental health, because it's so challenging. I think you mentioned you've done community too, which most of us have. It's hard. It's really hard work, and I understand it. And so I love being able to be the clinical supervisor that helps like get the new to the profession people, in it and support them and teach them, while also like trying to keep them from burning out, uh, trying to keep the profession going because there's a lot of gatekeeping, and I've got a lot of people who they'll say like, I would have stopped and not gone through. I would have changed career fields or at minimum not got my license if we didn't like work together. And some of them I think I've probably like thrown over the finish line. I've been like, nope, 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 go. Here you go. Right.
Yeah.
Love that too. That's super fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like it's hard to find a good supervisor to get licensed because it's not there. Right, there's a lot of gatekeeping, or some of my supervisors I felt like almost wanted me to be a mini of them and
Mm-hmm.
like do things exactly how they did it. I'm like, I don't. That's not my style. Like my style is
Yeah.
different than yours, and I'll like I guess I was like I'll talk to them and I'll take their advice and I'll like implement those skills with the client. But I'm not always like doing like copy and paste. I'm like
Right.
taking it and tweaking it to my style so it fits how I work with the client. And
Yeah.
then I feel like I was penalized almost for like not doing how they wanted it exactly. And like
Yeah.
this, but we're not all the same. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it's
and
frustrating.
our clients don't need all the same either, right? But you're absolutely right. Many needs, and there's a lot of sometimes that comes from a place of just concern about liability as well. People are like, well, I know how to do it so that I don't get sued, and I'm overseeing your cases, so I need you to do it a certain way so I don't get sued, kind of thing, right? But yes, being a good clinical supervisor is about fostering, independent thought, critical thinking, ethical decision making within your therapist so that they can, go and be the best version of therapist as they can be. My thing that I stress the most probably, besides the obvious, be ethical in your practice, is don't ever stop learning. Don't ever think that you've figured it all out or that you know a modality and how to help that person from that modality 100%. The moment we stop asking questions and being open to being taught and learning new things, like we're going to become less effective therapist.
Yeah. And like this field changes so often. Like
That's it.
you can't stop learning because heck, even whenever they went from the DSM-5, well, was it 4TR or 5TR, like the newer version, like there's a
Five
whole
to the
learning.
TR, yeah.
Yeah. Like there was a whole change there. And then like, especially with condensing like autism to a spectrum instead of having Asperger's and
Hmm.
then autism. And then I think it was Rett's that they can all combined into
Hmm.
one. And it's like you could change that and like it's all crazy.
Well, in learning the clinical side, yeah, that never stops. In science, we'll keep learning and unlearning and then relearning, right? Different things. Um, but also just learning about people and their lived experiences and never assuming that you understand everything just because, oh, I've seen a client like you before, right? And understanding that your lived experience is very different from mine, right? Like
Yeah.
a white cisgendered female grew up in a small town, but I cannot assume that everyone that has that, same identity, I've still got so much to learn from them. What's all the other stuff? So I think that's really important too.
Yeah. Because I think too, like small towns like varied, but like state by state too. Like I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure like what state you're in.
I grew up in Ohio, which is next to Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I was thinking Amish country, because I grew up like on the border where there's a lot of Amish that kind of bled into Pennsylvania. But I actually live in Tennessee, but I practice in Georgia. So all my therapy work is in Georgia.
Yeah. So like even then like going down south, like it changes the complete game too.
Oh,
Because like the
definitely.
culture
Yeah.
switch from the north to the south is like
Yep.
so big. Like, my older brother moved to North Carolina and he's been there almost half my life now. He's so much older than me. But like going to visit him and like, okay, we're not in Pittsburgh. We're not there anymore.
Definitely not. No. Yeah, so I think that's really important. What do you think is important to um, continuing to just be an effective therapist? What's kind of your take, I guess?
I agree with you. Like how you have to like constantly learn, constantly ask questions and never assume anything. I also think part of for me that makes me effective is I'm very much in tune to like this energies I'm getting from people. And like I
Mm,
kind of like use that to guide me in my sessions. So if I'm getting a certain vibe or getting a certain energy from people, that it's kind of like will directs me with where I need to
mm,
go. I'm
mm,
very much client directed in my
mm,
sessions. I always feel like I don't either the therapist should be the one always driving things because I always teach people skills. Like skills are needed. Like obviously,
yeah,
otherwise we're just sitting being friends, and like obviously
yeah,
they're not paying me to be their friend. But I
yeah,
want it to feel like a friendly thing and still
yeah,
like give them what they need. So I think that's what makes people effective is like letting clients drive it
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like that balance. It can, can be hard, right? You got to be able to pivot. And that's really important. You come in maybe thinking, "Oh, we're going to pick up where we left off last time with X, Y, or Z." And then it's like this whole other thing, right? And you're like, "All right, pivot," you know?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's and like you said, even especially working with the population I work with, you can watch their eyes just they're gone. They glazed over, right? Like we're talking about a skill or I'm, uh, ref summarizing, rephrasing whatever the skills are, right? That we learn
Yeah.
in therapy. Like so what I'm hearing you say is I don't say it like that, but right, we do that and they're just gone. You just see their eyes and you're like, all right, yeah, something else popped into the brain. So you have to pivot and you have to not take it personally. It's not about me. It's about like, all right, so something else popped into your mind. Where do we want to talk about that or, do we want to keep on with this one? And be willing to do whatever, right? So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Person centered and I think the rapport relationship
Oh yeah.
um, is so key. And everybody builds relationship at a different pace and differently.
Yeah. Especially like like for being I love trauma cases. And I have clients that, yeah, they came over for the trauma, but we're still building rapport and like we can't even touch on it because like they still need to trust me
Yeah.
fully. And I
No.
think too, like you can't rush it. Cannot rush building rapport. You have to just go at their own pace. And like if you try to go too fast, you're gonna lose them.
Yeah. Yeah. But that can be really hard, especially if you're working in managed care, right? Or if you're doing community-based work, or sometimes even if you're working, with kids and the parents are paying, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's that sense of urgency that a lot of clinicians will feel to make progress, to be able to note
Yeah.
down how far we got toward the goals. And, of course we want people to feel better as quickly as possible, but I think we got to be honest about the expectations, right? That's pretty important too.
Yeah, I agree. I think like that part of it too is like really big in like the community setting because like they get
Mhm.
so inundated with people coming in and they're so beholden to insurances and like showing progress and all the things. If they're not making progress, then everyone's like, well, why aren't you doing this? Like, what aren't you doing? Like, why aren't
Why
you
aren't
making
they better?
progress? You're like, yeah. And it's like, I'm working on it. But it's like, I can't change thoughts overnight. Like, I am not a fairy godmother. I can't wave one, but like, oh, you're better.
Right, right. Well, and I don't know what your experience was with community mental health, but I usually teach my clinicians the rule of like 3, right? You get 3 sessions to start often, right? Don't be offended if a client leaves you after 3 sessions because either in 3 sessions you fixed it, whatever was wrong, you fixed, or in 3 sessions you didn't fix it. So we're going to find another therapist. So I always tell them if you get over that like 3 to 4 session hump, great. Now you really get to like dive in. I don't know if you ever saw like there was like a kind of a fall off point with a lot of clients in that setting or not.
My my choice was a little bit different. So I started out with the community and doing family based. So like
Mhm.
I was doing into the home. So like they were stuck with me for 9 months. And then
Oh, so it
they
was like a program that they agreed to
yeah.
do. I think. Gotcha.
And then I moved to school based and I was like either the only option for school based
Mhm.
or they just
Yeah.
didn't do it after the intake. So that was usually how it happened. It was like they were
Right.
stuck with me. And then like we did it. And like all the kiddos that I say with like it was great. I sometimes will miss those kids, honestly,
Mhm.
because like they were great. Uh,
Yeah.
but when I did outpatient in an agency setting, a lot of them like I was like their fourth or fifth therapists in the
Yeah.
agency because they would like bounce. So
Yeah.
I wasn't like super holding my breath for them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in school-based, you're right. I do see people stick around. Yeah, I mean, you're there with them. School-based, that rule doesn't apply as much, but community-based and in the clinic, I try to encourage them, you know. So it's always interesting to see just how it shifts in different places. So yeah. So
Yeah.
what's on the horizon for you?
Um, well, I'm finishing up my EMDR certification next
Oh,
month.
very nice.
Yeah. And then starting in July, I'll be working on my hypnotherapy certification.
Very cool.
Yeah. What about you?
All right.
What's next for you?
Um, Yeah, so I'm trying to be intentional this summer with I've gotten a lot of people kind of over the finish line with supervision. So I'm trying to be really intentional about figuring out the next steps, right? And like growing the private practice because business so far has just kind of kept coming, which is wonderful and great. But I really have spent since we did the marketing class, I like to have my big picture and then make things happen. So I've got my big picture, so now I just need to make the things happen. And this is where like my own ADHD kind of works against me. I have like 50 tabs open with half done projects.
Yep.
So I'm committed to finishing some projects. I'm rolling out some coaching programs that are neurodivergent affirming and also like kind of DBT driven. So how can we use the skills here with your unique brain? So I'm working on some coaching, trying to partner with a few therapists who they're doing the therapy piece and I would be doing more like the skill building. So it's still like therapy, but it's kind of like in the community setting, how you would have like your more skill building and then you've got your more therapist, right? Because I have a lot of therapists who say like, I don't want to touch the executive function stuff. I want to do the trauma, the CBT, the X, Y, and Z, right? Can
Yeah.
you just help them because the executive function is making it really hard for them to show up in a way that they're ready to do kind of that deeper work as well. So I'm excited about partnering with some therapists on that as well. And then I'm working on some leadership program because that's the other side. So specifically like leadership development for people who are therapists or are working in agencies. I try to do, be good leaders in a really challenging space, especially right now, more and more when we keep seeing cuts to budgets and stigma increasing.
That's awesome. So I ask everyone when I do my podcast, what is the best way for people to find you, to connect with you, if they feel like they've like died with you with us talking and they want to learn more about you?
Absolutely. So my website that I did not have prior to the marketing thing, and then I got it started. I launched it about a month ago, so it's
Okay.
still a work in progress. But it's kestrelpsychotherapy.com. And so super excited about that because it started a month ago. Also open to feedback. People are like, your website doesn't make sense. But I'll be adding other stuff. Um, I'll be adding other stuff there too. So that's the best way because you can contact me. My email's there as well. You can see more about what I do. And then I'm working on the social media stuff. We'll get there. Little bits at times.
Yeah, social media takes,
Right.
but
That's next on the list. I did register a Facebook thing
okay.
finally. So now I just gotta get some content, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put all your links in the captions below the video, and I'll put like a final, like a last slide too at the end of this video that people can find as well. And so
Absolutely. I
we can
love it.
connect with
And
you.
I also love to connect with other therapists too. So I know like licensing and states and stuff like that make it hard for clients, but also super happy just to connect with therapists. And I think that's important too. How do we uplift each other, you know?
Yeah, I think that's huge too, because like especially when we're in private practice, it can be so isolating too. So like just connecting with other therapists to have like that rapport and that network to connect to, especially like if I know someone in down Georgia and that's a new niche, like, hey, go see Randy.
Yeah,
And
see? Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to connect. And that's why I love doing this. I love connecting with all you guys because then it expands the network and people get to know you guys. And
Yeah.
it's been great.
And then I can send people in Pennsylvania your way.
Yeah. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania, Vermont, Florida, and South Carolina.
Look at that. I
Yeah.
love that. I need
I
to
do work,
focus on states, but one thing at a time.
yeah. I'm gonna be working on New Jersey next because my husband's long-term goal is to get a beach house in Avalon, New Jersey, because we love Avalon. We go there like almost every year.
I love that. I love that. All right. Well, thank
Yeah.
you again for having me. It's good to talk with you.
Yes, you too. Thank you. And I will give you all this stuff soon.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yes.
Bye.